different communication platform, and that's social media. We'll also go ahead to discuss the skills that you need to effectively benefit from using social media to disseminate research and engage with policy audiences and influential people in general. Now, before I go further, I should mention that during the broadcast, you should be able to pose some questions. I think there's also an option where you can raise your hand and Laura will be able to identify your issue and then we can share it on the platform. There we go. So when we say social media, what comes to mind? If I could ask the fellows, like, what are some of the platforms you consider as social media? If someone comes to you and say, oh, I was doing this and this on social media, what are some of the what are some of the activities that you think are linked to social media? For instance, what do you do on these platforms? Okay, Eunice, I see very good responses coming through. Facebook, Twitter. I see Facebook. Judith there, Facebook and Twitter. Yep. Okay. Yeah, so those are very correct. And in terms of activities, we use these platforms for sharing updates, photos, commenting, liking, as well as disseminating information. So usually when we talk of social media, we often think of it in the personal sense, okay? So that is networking with friends and families to share life updates, you know, photos, videos, and so on. However, in addition to this, social media has also become an important medium where you can disseminate research, build advocacy networks, and also engage with policy, as well as other type of influential audiences. So more and more you notice, for instance, ministries or individual policy makers, we have politicians as well. All these people have social media platforms. Some are active, of course, but others might engage only once in a while. For instance, if you think of donors, NGOs, think of research institutions, civil society organizations, and journalists, these tend to be more active. But at the same time, you find that individuals who might not otherwise be seen as influential can then start to build a social media presence, and they also assert themselves as an authority or opinion leader within this social media sphere. Now, let's take a step back and, you know, define more clearly what social media is. It's pretty simple, actually. So the idea of social networking entails interacting with other users. So this can be either individuals or organizations. And this interaction is an online kind of interaction. And it's in the way of sharing ideas, thoughts, but also opinions. So looking at this slide, you're all probably familiar with at least some of the social media tools and sites. But looking at this also, you see that the landscape of social media is really diverse. Now, the graphic here shows 6 main categories of social media. On the right here, you know, on the right, the outer circle, we have sharing. So that's in form of sharing platforms which are focused on sharing content. That can be in the form of videos, photos, or information. So examples of this kind of social media would include YouTube, you'll see up there, and there's Pinterest, Instagram, you know, looking at the sharing aspect of this graphic. The second one is on messaging. So such platforms allow users to send direct messages to individuals or groups. So for this one, think more of emails or texting, chatting online. So of course, this would include the likes of WhatsApp and Gmail. The third component, which is at the bottom, these platforms are focused on engaging. So think about having dialogue about current events or articles and so on. So this would also be things like Reddit or Snapchat. Maybe some are more familiar with that one. The fourth component of this is collaborating. So here, the platforms for collaboration, basically, they allow users to share professional content for workplace corporations. So examples here would include Dropbox or OneDrive. Probably most of us use these in our workplaces, or Slack. Then the fifth category is on networking. This platform enables making connections with people. So it's all about building relationships. And a very good example of this is LinkedIn. Finally, we have publishing. Social publishing basically allows anyone to publish individually developed content, and this is in a publicly accessible medium. It allows you to disseminate and receive feedback. So here we tend to think of blogs, but also Wikipedia. And then there are those platforms that cut across, and they serve a variety of functions. So a good example of these are the likes of Facebook, Twitter, and Google. So these are the big ones in that sense. So in this presentation, and for the general purpose of using social media where dissemination of research and communicating policy messages is concerned, we'll be focusing on Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn. I'm sure we're all familiar with the icons on the screen. So why is social media important today? If we had to do a quick think of why we use social media, why is it important? For what use is social media? Again, you can feel free to type in your responses in the chat box. Why is Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, why are all these platforms important? Manuel there says to socialize. I see Olu's talking about dissemination of information. Asan is talking about to reach, to connect and reach other people. So these are all very good examples of why we use social media. So the bar graph on the right, it shows the most important social media networks worldwide. And these are ranked by the number of active users. As you can see, Facebook here is leading with about 2.2 billion. Then we have Twitter, which is further down with about 330 million, and LinkedIn at 260 million. But if I were to pose the question to you, how many people in total are using social media? Looking at the bar, what's the total number of people that are using social media? Feel free to use your phones perhaps for a quick calculation, but looking at the numbers here, what's the total number of social media users? Meanwhile, I'm still seeing responses to the previous one. Yes, very good examples to address many audiences, good way of networking and marketing our research. Okay, any thoughts about the total number of social media users? I'll move on. In case I missed your responses, we'll be able to get to that later. So as of 2018, 3.2 billion individuals were using social media each month. So as demographers or researchers, you know that this means that in 2018, then more than a third of the people on this planet were using social media, okay? The reach of social media is global. So it teaches every continent and it reaches every continent and every country. So again, in 2018, we had almost 1 million people who started using social media for the first time every day. So that's more than 11 new users every second. You can imagine how many people are using social media and how much it's growing. The fastest gains for social media use have been in Central and Southern Asia. But of course, thinking of Africa, we've also seen the fastest growth rates for internet use, with the number of internet users for this across the continent increasing by more than 20%. That's, per year on. And as we mentioned before, social media has broken out of the purely social sphere. And so it's increasingly, it can aid in disseminating of research and also connecting with leaders in your different fields. Social media is a pretty unique platform in that it can enable you to gain name recognition, but also to build a following for your work. And that's if you invest the time and effort in growing that presence. So it's not just an automatic kind of gain. So how do we use social media? At this point, we'll take you through some basics and also best practices for our 3 focus platforms. You remember what those are. So that's Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn. Okay, so how many of you, by show of hands, I don't know, maybe you can just post a comment. How many of you have personal Facebook accounts? Me, okay, Carol has a Facebook account. Who else? Eunice has a Facebook account, thank you. Catherine, I see you. Godfrey has a personal Facebook account. Yeah, and many more, I'm pretty sure most of us have. So Facebook is a social networking website, and it makes it easy for you to connect and share with your family and friends online. However, you can also use Facebook professionally. And how do you do that? So for starters, by 1, sharing exciting professional news and research results with your biggest supporters. So those are your friends and family. So these are also likely your Facebook friends. Number 2, learning about various organizations, groups, or high-profile individuals that have Facebook pages. The third one is by advocating for social issues which are related to your research. Always think about your areas of research, or perhaps matters that are of personal interest. And lastly, you can engage with topics and work in a manner that is less formal than you'd have in a workplace, or for instance, a strictly professional platform such as LinkedIn. Okay. So 3 key areas of Facebook are individual profile pages, or organizational pages, and groups. Okay. So those of you who are active on Facebook probably have private Facebook pages, but for well-known public figures, they may have pages that you can choose to follow. So it becomes more public and accessible by other people who you wouldn't normally know on a day-to-day, activity. So as you can see here, I hope you can all see properly. Yeah, it's zoomed in. So Melinda Gates is very active on Facebook. Her page is neat, it's clean, and she contributes to global discourse generally. You'll also note that her pictures are professional and her words are carefully chosen. So her page presents itself as a leader in the world of family planning. So for instance, if you follow, or if you click the follow option at the top end of the screen, there's follow, share, or save. So if you follow her, then that also means that her posts will start to show up in your newsfeed. And so you'll be able to like, comment, and share these kinds of posts, or whatever information is shared there. So you pretty much have access to the information she's posting. And as a result, you'll be up to date on family planning issues. So this works with different personalities. For Melinda, it's more about family planning, but depending on who you follow, then you'll have similar topics coming up in your newsfeed. Okay, so many organizations are active on Facebook, including PRB and Africa, of course. So for PRB, they use Facebook to share stories and also to connect with people who are interested in PRB work or people who are doing similar research and advocacy. So generally, PRB's Facebook page is an online space, and it allows people to ask questions or chat about posted content. PRB engages and grows its audiences by posting daily. For AFIDEP, on the other hand, we also have a Facebook page, although on our side, we use it more for job adverts, events, stakeholder highlights, but mostly for videos. We tend to take more of our attention to Twitter, and Facebook is more for the videos. For instance, during the recently concluded ICPD conference, we used the Facebook Live feature, which ideally is supposed to, present events in real time. So even if someone is not there physically, they can have a sense of whatever discussions or sessions that are going on at that event. Another way to use Facebook is through groups rather than just your profile and timeline. So by researching, we found the Social Science Research Group, which you see on the screen, and it has about 5,000 members, which then suggested to us the Research Scholar Alerts Group, and this one has 30,000 members, and they post a lot of opportunities. So as you may already know, we have a Policy Communication Fellows alumni group. So this is a space where you can share opportunities, achievements, or connect with other alumni. In case you don't have the link to that, we'll be able to share this at the end of the webinar. So here we have some guidelines to start engaging on Facebook by posting to your page or to a group. The first one, keep it short. The shorter, the better. So typically posts of 100 to 200 characters are the most engaging. They're also easy to skim as your followers cruise through their Facebook newsfeed. So learn to edit your posts so that they make sense in less words. But at the same time, Facebook is a platform that allows for longer posting, unlike Twitter where you learn in a few minutes. So don't be afraid to take advantage of that flexibility when it makes sense. Secondly, consider your audience. If you're just posting for your own followers, you may take a different tone than if you're posting for a group of strangers who share a common interest. So always think about what the audience knows about your issue and also how you can begin to engage them positively, okay? Thirdly, ask questions. Questions are a great way to get comments. So try to make your questions clear and direct. If you can, place questions at the end of your post, okay? The fourth point here is to be visual. It's noted that images are the most engaging on Facebook. So adding a good image will attract readers. The next point is to keep variety in your posts, but at the same time, you also want to stay consistent within your overall theme. So don't get carried away in the moment, just stick to what the general idea is. And then lastly is for it to be timely and relevant. Your posts should be written for immediate action. So write your posts so that they can be read and engaged with as of right now, okay, in the moment. So on this slide, we have two examples of PRB posts. The example that's posted on the left reached about 873 people, and generated 5 shares, including shares from Data Sharing for Demographic Research, ICPSR, and the tagged University of Michigan Institute for Social Research. So you can tag organizations in posts to make sure that they see content that is related to them. In this particular post, we also snuck in some of our related research content. So if you look at the example on the right, you can see PRB's posts reached about 9,835 people. It generated 1,200 reactions, and it was shared 19 times. This post was part of a campaign or a series of posts, so it highlighted organizations for the 16 days of activism against gender-based violence. The campaign was hugely successful, and it reached over 77,000 users during the 16 days. So while it generated high levels of engagement from PRB followers, it also engaged many followers of the organizations that we were highlighting. So that's the beauty of tagging and including other like-minded organizations. It expands your audience. So on Facebook and other platforms, it's always important to remember the social part of social media. So you shouldn't just be sharing your research and accomplishments, but also actively supporting your community and networks. So that aspect of, giving back to society. So here we have Twitter. And Twitter is a free social networking microblogging service that allows registered members to broadcast short posts, which are called tweets. Twitter members can broadcast tweets and follow other users' tweets. A lot of tweeting going on there. Twitter encourages more discussion, although it requires shorter messages if you compare with Facebook. So posts on Twitter are not controlled by algorithms like other social networking sites. In that way, any posts will be seen in real time. Journalists and the media typically tend to use Twitter to share breaking stories, and that's because it's the quickest out of the social media platforms. So in case you're wondering, how can such a short message have relevance to universities and academia, for instance, whereas journal articles are typically 3,000 to 1,000 words long? Well, Twitter can be used in several ways. First, sharing your research, okay? And then secondly, keeping up to date on news in your field. Third point is interacting with the media and also policymakers. And then, talking about alerting others to participate in conferences or events, talks, seminars, and such kind of activities. There's also collecting data for future funding. Here, it shows growth in your followers, and the number of people who engage on your research can also be helpful for funding applications. Then lastly, you can use Twitter to engage with students, non-academics, and of course, the general public. Okay. So here's an example of someone's profile on Twitter. So this is Dr. Natalia Kanem. I'm sure some or most of you know her. She's the executive director of UNFPA. She has over 13,000 followers. Okay, so she's a very influential policymaker, and she tweets, retweets, and comments on relevant information. As you can see, her profile is well constructed, and that's because it's clear, it's professional, it's well curated, and it has a concise bio and a link to her organization. So, if you wanted to get more information, you can always access the link and get the information there. She adds valuable discussion to issues. She uses hashtags to get things trending. So from her page, you can see that she has tweeted over 8,000 times. She follows about 898 people, and then she has over 13,000 followers, as I had mentioned, and then she has liked 2,600 tweets. Each of those numbers is a link. That's how you should be thinking of this. So if you are curious to see who else follows her or who she is following, you can then click on the respective sections at the top of her profile. Okay, here's another example of a profile page. So we have Robert Martin. He's a PhD professor at London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine, but he doesn't have the same stature as someone like Dr. Natalia. So nonetheless, he's regularly active on Twitter, and you can see that he has generated a following of more than 4,000 individuals. When he tweets something, it gets out there. So one way he could improve his profile is to add a link to his LinkedIn or personal website below his bio. You see, that expands his viewership, but it also gets people connected to the different platforms that he's on. Typically, people tend to have more information on LinkedIn. Considerations for an engaging tweet are similar to Facebook. A key factor on Twitter is that posts are limited to 280 characters. So you need to learn to edit your posts in such a way that they make sense, but in less words, okay? So there are several resources online and also links at the end of this presentation. So those will help you to identify commonly used acronyms that help you stay within the 280 character limit. So consider your audience in that what do they already know about the topic and why is this important to share with them? Third tip for writing an engaging tweet is ask questions. So questions are a great way to generate engagement with your audience. So try to ask questions that are easy to answer, since responses are also limited to 280 characters. So if you can, you place the questions at the end of your post. Another tip is to be visual. Okay, so use images. These are the most engaging on Twitter. Adding a good image will stand out in a busy Twitter feed, and it also attracts more readers. You also want to keep variety in your posts. While you need to stay consistent in your general theme, post a variety of types of content, such as links to articles and blog posts. So you also want to share other people's content as well as your own. Another tip is to be timely and relevant. Your posts should be written for immediate action, So write your posts so that they can be read and engaged with as of right now. These all sound similar with what we talked about under the Facebook. At the same time, however, don't be afraid to reuse your content. Remember, Twitter is in real time and there are many people tweeting. So you should post several times a day to try to reach different people and audiences. You might also want to post 2 or 3 different tweets on a similar topic. You can also retweet your own tweets for as many times as you like. So this will make that tweet appear again in people's feed. Okay, hashtags. On Twitter, hashtags will allow your posts to be indexed or searchable for other users to see. So generally, a hashtag is a phrase It's an abbreviation or a word that's preceded by the pound or hash sign, which will then be searchable by other users. It's a clever way to follow conversations, engage with specific communities, identify new users to follow. So on the left side of your Twitter feed, you can see trending hashtags, and these highlight the most popular conversations for that day. By clicking on a hashtag, you will be able to search all public posts that have the hashtag included. So, excuse me. So searching hashtags is a useful way to identify additional influential leaders who are relevant to your topics of interest. In this example, the hashtag family planning is in bold because that is the hashtag we used to find this post. So this is a good example because K4Health used two general topic hashtags. So that's a hashtag for family planning, and then they have a hashtag for contraception. So that makes the post discoverable, and also a specific hashtag, which is hashtag FP Voices. So this will link to all of their family planning voices project posts. Okay. A fun fact, the woman in this photo was actually a policy communication fellow. In 2013, that is. A few rules for hashtags is that you want to post relevant and simple hashtags. The fewer the characters, the better. Also, hashtags will not link to your post if you add a space or punctuation. So focus on a word or a simple phrase. It needs to be one word and not spaced out. Don't think of grammar and whatnot. Check out what hashtags people and organizations in your network or influential leaders are using. So by using the same hashtag for similar content, you can join in on their conversation. Before you use a hashtag, do a quick search to make sure others use it in the same way. Okay, for instance, an acronym in your field might be completely different in another, and it may or may not be a hashtag on social media. So another rule is to keep in mind your hashtags will only be visible to other users if your account privacy settings are public. Otherwise, if you have a private account, those hashtags might only be seen by your followers or the people you're in contact with. Do not use more than 2 to 3 hashtags in a post, or it will come across as crowded and unreadable. So much as we're talking about how valuable or how important hashtags are, you also don't want to overdo it. Okay. So here's an example of a tweet. This tweet was in relation to PRB's 2018 World Population Datasheet. It's using social media. PRB was able to then share graphics and statistics related to the larger findings in the data sheet. You can see that they've used 2 hashtags here. So there's the hashtag for Nigeria, and there's the hashtag for World Pop Data. That's a general hashtag, and it's a specific PRB project one. So here we included a link to the data sheet so that viewers can look at the entire data sheet if the tweet piques their interest. It's also good practice to include a link or a call to action so that people know how to engage with the subject matter that's outside of social media. For these tweets, you'll see that it also includes a photo. This helps it to stand out and also look more appealing on Twitter. This photo is actually a visual that was created for this particular social media campaign. So it's for the purpose of making the tweets more engaging and appealing. Below the image, if you look below the image, you can see that basic stats that this was retweeted 182 times. It was liked 195 times. So The small profile pics to the right of those stats are the people who liked and retweeted this. And then below that, you can also see the button to reply to this tweet. So you can reply, retweet, or like the tweet itself. It just depends on how much of an impact the tweet has made to you. If you think you simply just like, or you have something to say in response to that, you could comment and put your thoughts there. So here we have two examples of engaging tweets. These were shared by professionals not working for PRB. In the example on the left, we have Julia Bunting, who is the president of the Population Council. She shares a PRB video and encourages her followers to watch it. That's a strong call to action. She also provides a link and 3 good hashtags, including this hashtag on ICFP 2018. So that's for the International Conference on Family Planning. So that was taking place at that time. She has also tagged at PRB data. So meaning that PRB will get a notification that she is sharing, PRB work, and they can then retweet it on their own page. Julia is the CEO of Population Council, and she has 2,885 followers. Okay, so we move to the right. That example, we have Conrad Hackett, who shared a link to the PRB data visualization. And that's referenced as declines in adult death rates lag in the US South. So as you can see here, Conrad's tweets generated many retweets and likes, many more than the original post, okay? So Hackett is the associate director at Pew Research, and he has 157,000 followers. So this makes him a powerful influencer in our field. However, because he did not tag PRB data or use PRB project hashtag, it took a bit of searching on our end to discover that he actually tweeted this. So there you see the importance of the hashtags and, tagging different organizations or individuals. So Twitter lists can help you stay organized on Twitter. They're a means for keeping track of influencers and accounts. They are also one of the most underutilized tools, but they're amazingly powerful, okay? They are an easy way to sort similar profiles into designated categories, meaning you can easily keep up with your connections. You can also make lists public or make them private, and you don't have to be following an account to put them on a list. In this list for PRB's focus area on people, health, and planet, we've added 14 individual and organizations profiles. These are experts on population and environment. So lists can be as big or as small as you like, and there's no limit to, in terms of how many you can have. Okay, now we move to LinkedIn. So LinkedIn is a social media site, mostly for professional networking. It also includes employers posting jobs and job seekers posting their resumes. It offers a way to engage with a particular organization, but also, reaching out to individuals on a platform that's designed for professional interactions. There's also, it provides a chance to keep a public record of your professional accomplishments. So the focus is mostly keeping, it's like sharing all your professional database, so to speak. So it can be used for several things. For starters, you can use LinkedIn to keep your CV up to date. So there will be no CV formatting issues because you basically just enter the information directly into the website form. So whatever version of a CV you have in your folder, that's what you would be uploading on LinkedIn. The second way of using LinkedIn is to share research or projects. So in addition to posting an update, you can also upload full documents or visuals under specific job titles. It's also a great way to highlight your research across different companies. So if there's some research work you're doing, you could upload a whole thesis or, whatever piece of work you're working on and put it on your LinkedIn profile. The third point in terms of how to use LinkedIn is networking for job opportunities. So you can sign up for job notifications on LinkedIn, and the platform algorithms will learn what you're interested in. So it's based on which postings you click on. This means that the more you use LinkedIn to search for jobs, the more it will share relevant jobs with you. It's all about, sticking in line with your area of interest. Learning about various organizations or groups. That's the fourth way of using LinkedIn. So just like Facebook, LinkedIn also has a function for groups where you can join groups that are centered on a particular topic. It's also a great way to find out about grants, for instance, or partnerships which are relevant to your field. The last aspect is following the work of experts in your field. You can connect with individuals, or you can follow organizations whose work you find relevant. So overall, LinkedIn users generate connections by engaging with others and requesting that they connect with you. Okay, that's how it works. You connect, that means there's where on Twitter you have following, LinkedIn is about connecting. So it's different from other social media platforms because it's professionally based, and so it requires that you tell the platform exactly how or where the person you're looking to connect with on a professional level before you can actually connect with them. So once someone becomes a connection, you can see their professional information, such as promotions or new positions in other companies. You can also see changes in their geographical location. So you see this one is a bit more personal, and it has all those steps to verify how clear someone is. LinkedIn is also very good for networking. It's a great way to not only search for and apply for jobs, but you can use LinkedIn to reach out to an individual or an organization as well that you would like to work with or work for. So in that sense, you get to start a conversation in a more respectful manner, okay? Okay, another example for an individual page for LinkedIn. This is Shaya. I'm not sure how many of you know of her. She's a senior policy analyst at PRB. At this point, she had over 400 connections, which indicates that she's an avid user and that many people in her field that are interested in connecting with her on a professional level. So she also has a concise bio, you'll notice, and this gives viewers an idea of the type of professional she is and also what her skill sets are. In the example on the right, however, so Shelley has posted about her 4-year anniversary with PRB. She tagged PRB in the post, and you can see the response in the comments. Many individuals in her professional network also commented and liked the post. So people are congratulating her on the professional milestone. In that sense, LinkedIn can be used for sharing, speaking engagements, interesting articles, you share research publications, but it also can be used simply to just share professional updates and achievements. So like here, it's about celebrating an anniversary. If you get, a new posting, you could put that on LinkedIn. It gets people up to date on your professional advancements. So the Gates Foundation is a good example of an organizational page on LinkedIn. If you look at this example, you see that they have over 637,000 followers. So if you look further, you see there's a description of the organization. They also have links to more information on the foundation. There's access to recent updates, for instance, job descriptions for, open positions, or also the current employee accomplishments, okay? That's information you find on their page. Okay, on this next slide, here we see an example of a professional group that you could join. That depends on whether this is your area of interest. So professional groups connect members in a certain field, and also it promotes discussion between members. So it's on different topics and developments that are relevant to that particular field. So in a group, members will often post articles that they have written. They'll also post about job openings at their organizations and also topics for discussion. So joining a group can be valuable to you because it can connect you with other professionals that you otherwise wouldn't meet on a date. It's not the kind of people you meet on the streets or at a conference. It's also a way to hear about opportunities that are related to a particular topic. For instance, research funding, or you could learn about the work that other people are doing in different parts of the world. So that's the idea of professional groups. Okay, so now that we've reviewed the basics of the platforms, we'll go ahead to talk about how to engage and also grow influence. Okay, so one of the goals for these best practices and also for using social media in general is that you can use the platforms to assert yourself in your field or area of expertise, but also to demonstrate that you are influential. Who is an influencer? Influencers are people who are active on social media and blogs. They also are brand advocates and niche promoters, okay? So the power of social media is that it gives anyone a voice. So it's up to you on how you use it. You have the voice, but how you use it, that becomes your role. The people who've harnessed their social media voice and established themselves as experts on social media, they're not necessarily the same people that we think of as influential or experts in other dimensions. So while directors of large NGOs, for instance, or think of high-level donors, members of the media, and particularly esteemed researchers, they tend to have large followings. So you can generate a following without those credentials. It's not necessarily about the big name. Probably someone is sitting there thinking, oh, but these are all big people. No, that's not meant to scare you away. So an example is Chelsea Pollis. So this is someone who's not famous. Even I don't know who she is. But she has created a niche for herself on social media somehow, okay? So she uses her platform to discuss matters that are related to contraception and women's health. This creates a space for her to be seen as an expert in her area, and so it draws others to want to follow her because she has a trusted voice in the space, and they know when they follow her, she is on brand and she's also on topic. Through actively engaging with others in her field on social media, that's including critiques, and reaching out to journalists who cover health issues, so she's created a platform for herself, okay? That generates returns as others look to her as an expert, and journalists come to her to comment on stories. This is someone who started out as, I don't want to call her nobody, but yes, did you know of Chelsea Pollis before this webinar? Probably not. But here she is making a name for herself. Ta-da! We all know who that is, I think. Yes, so this is another example of affidavits on Rose Oronje. Yes, so she's built a following of more than 3,500 people on Twitter. Rose is very active on Twitter. I recommend that you follow her. So this is a chance to get people, you know, with similar interests. So you get to be rocked into the different areas that she's talking about. And through such kinds of links, you can then have access to other platforms, okay? In order to identify influencers, you need to know something about your field. Influencers are relevant to you and your topic. So on Twitter, especially, it's possible to connect with individuals who have the same niche interests as yourself. So rather than everyone who is interested in family planning, you could probably identify the people talking about the particular facet of your field that you are an expert in, okay? So it starts with non-entities, the large NGOs, donors, or officials in your field. Start by following them, and then you pay attention to who else is following them. Influencers are active on social media, and they have typically built a large following. So leverage the power of hashtags to determine who posts in your arena. So this might take some experimenting or playing around on social media to determine. But as you follow these non-entities and try out different hashtags, you'll then begin to discern which hashtags have active conversations. So it's all a matter of growing in the process. You follow one person today, you stretch it out to their connections, and in the end, you also grow your audiences. If it's about publishing your work, you have more people looking at your work. So you also want to put the influencers you want to connect with on Twitter list so that you can keep track on them all in one place, or, you know, at least center them around particular topics. Reaching out to influencers. So if you want to reach out to an influencer, you think carefully about how to approach the person and what you'll say, right? So you can either use the @ symbol, you know, in addition to their Twitter handle, or you can use a direct message. So be sure to also use the etiquette tips from the previous slides. You know, this is so as to be polite when speaking. How else do you reach out to influencers? Be friendly and keep it short and sweet. Also, do your research on who it is that you're speaking with so that you're informed to engage in a conversation with them, okay? However, it's more effective to build a connection with an influencer first, rather than, you know, outright direct messaging them. Follow them, at least retweet them, tweet at them, get them to, you know, notice your existence or just have a familiarity to it. And then you put in your request. So you use the same practices that you would for a face-to-face networking. I mean, you don't just show up in somebody's face and, hey, here I am, I'm presenting my research. So it's about doing that step-by-step kind of intro, you know, get familiar with the person. And so if you don't get a response, don't follow up more than once, you know, at least in the short term. And also, more importantly, don't mass tweet by sending the same generic message out to many people. You know, if you're sending it to donors or different organizations all at once. The problem with this is that it can be perceived as spam, and so it removes the personal element of the engagement. So you run a risk in that one if you're just sending out generic kinds of messages. So lastly, thank yous go a long way, like to say thank you, okay? So you thank them if they've shared your work. You ask them for feedback. You also offer to send them advance notice of your next similar publication. That way, you know, you build the connection so that you yourself can become an influencer. Okay, so what we mean in terms of direct messaging for the influencers, it allows you to privately connect with other users, yeah? So they are useful forum for when you want to ask a question, for instance, or you want to, you know, seek assistance and you don't want it to be public. So if you're direct messaging, you just make sure that you do it in a polite manner, okay? Especially if the message is to someone you don't know personally. In the examples on the slide, you can see a mass message with no explanation is not a good way to get people to share your research, okay? So in that way, you want to take time to at least reach out to individuals, and then provide context. You can also have a call to action, and most importantly, say thanks. It goes a long way. So you'll also get results in that way. I think everyone appreciates a little appreciation. Yeah. So here's another example of a hashtag search. Okay, I had mentioned it in passing earlier, but you know, it's quite valuable in identifying who's active in your field, and also you know, it helps with which influencers that you might want to reach out to. In the search bar, if you look on the upper right, we typed in hashtag family planning. So this was, you know, so that we can locate other users on Twitter that are tweeting about family planning. The practice allows you to find other material on your topic of interest by pulling up relevant and up-to-date material on, you know, that particular subject. So it's not necessarily only for family planning. This is just for purposes of giving an example. You can replace this with the theme of your research. And from our search, here are the top results from that. You see that the people who tweet about the hashtag and also top posts with the hashtag. So if you choose latest, for instance, instead of top, you'll see up to the minute latest tweets that are using that hashtag, right? So wait, I don't know if you're able to see the arrow. I wasn't sure if it's an active one. So you want to select some of these individuals to follow. As you see more of their content, you can then, you know, you may want to reach out and begin to engage with them. Okay, on the next slide, this is more about live tweeting. So this is, it's now, you know, it's commonplace and it's often encouraged, especially for those of us who might be attending events and you want to post about the event in real time. So if you attend events, for instance, the launch of a new report, ICPD just concluded recently, or a policy community meeting. So you want to tweet about it. Live tweeting typically includes sharing statements, or you can get quotes from different people. It depends, you know, if you had a chance to ask someone some questions, you could get a caption of what those individuals said specifically. And you can also share announcements in real time, more or less. So this enables you to engage with the interested followers who can't be at that event or conference where you are. In the same way, if you're attending a major event, you do some social media research in advance, rather than doing this while you're already there. So you can start by making a list of the profiles for the different organizations that are sponsoring the event, for example. And then you also want to see if the speakers at that forum are active on social media. You can Google most of these things and you'll get something out of it. So you check the event invitation or some of the materials on arrival, okay? And then you also see if the event has a specific hashtag. Mostly, most events do tend to have a hashtag, so that's something you want to get ahead of while the event is starting. So you post during the event. You can then see if you can get some retweets from the sponsor organizations. How do you do that? Remember to tag them. So whichever organizations are there, you can list them, as we mentioned earlier, and then you know what their Twitter accounts or social media, pages that they have. So you search the relevant hashtags for the event, depending on what that is, and also follow other people who are posting about the event. So you'll see this in the example on the right. We have our very own Dr. Zulu. So that's just a simple tweet, but with a photo of the room. And this in itself can generate a lot of engagement. You see what the power of visualization do? I think typically people have a lot of things to scroll through. So if you see a photo, it draws your attention to that particular event. And Twitter chats are another platform to host a specific conversation exclusively, okay? So the visual on the left is from a live Twitter chat that was hosted by Center for Global Development and Global Health Council. You often see the notations of using the letters Q or A and also numbers. So this denotes questions, answers, and connected responses, yeah? So in terms of tweet chat, anyone can participate in these, but the success of these tweet chats depends on your engagement with the audience. So you respond to questions, you ask questions, you retweet, and see who else is active. Apart from that, you seek out others to follow and see if you can grow your own following, by using this type of opportunity for engagement. And live tweeting and participating in Twitter chats, these are very effective ways to generate new connections. Reason being is that people are online at the same time and they're centered around discussing the same topic. So that's something you want to tap into and, maximize on. Okay, we are almost getting to the end of the presentation. So above all, one thing I could say is, to remember that social media is about staying connected, okay? So connection. Many of these platforms, they make it easy to meet like-minded users and also to draw new connections. So you might be surprised just how accessible social media can be for maintaining or strengthening connections. You also want to consider these strategies to identify and stay connected with influential leaders and your peers. So particularly, you stay abreast of new posts, posts that are being made by influential leaders. And if they host a website or a blog, for instance, that's a good idea to occasionally check, you check their personal site for new content. Another way of keeping up to date is to, that social media is a great space for collaboration, yeah? So we've talked about influential leaders, but this one is more in terms of collaboration. So look out for users that have similar research interests or users that have overlapping content to your research focus. And if you think you might make a worthwhile collaboration, you propose a few tangible opportunities. You also want to attend web events. Yeah. So these are events that are related to your topic of interest. A web event is the perfect opportunity to gain direct access to your influential leader. Often you note that, there'll be an opportunity to chat or either host other participants and also to, take part in a Q&A session. So maximize on this opportunity to connect with the chat leader or whoever the potential influential leader is. So you do this by participating in the web event, and then you have some follow-ups after that. So that way the web event host can remember who you are. It's also very useful as a reference, in terms of your contribution to the discussion. There are many online communities of practice or networks. So seek out a few of these, particularly those that align with your research interests or policy goals. And so you want to stay active in the group, okay? Let people know you're there and what your thoughts are on the topic. Because often these groups, they post worthwhile updates, their discussion topics. There's also different events, but they're more exclusive to members. That's why you want to align yourself to specific groups. You may also come across a few influential leaders in these spaces. Another way of staying connected is, signing up for weekly updates. Some websites will circulate these, daily, weekly, or monthly newsletters, or typically what we call email blasts. So those are things you want to sign up for, especially if they're in your area of interest, okay? So this is a great way to keep up with the news, but also, get updates in your field. Lastly, don't feel restricted, when it comes to these online connections. Where it's appropriate, you can take an online conversation offline, like take the discussion off of social media. You might attend an in-person event hosted by your influential leader and make a personal connection at that point. So this can also boost your engagement online, or it can translate in that social media connection for a new opportunity, whether it's in person, but also in relation to your work. So the whole idea of these platforms is that you should be able to build up on them. If there's an opportunity to meet some of these influential people face to face, you take up the opportunity and follow up and, get them to at least have a face to their name. So it is important to remember that active users and also those who have a large following, you need to monitor how people react to, these postings. In that way, you ensure that posts are not being misinterpreted, and it also gives you that sense of, managing any offensive reaction. Online, we also see issues of internet trolls, yeah? I'm not sure if you've heard of the term troll or trolling. So trolling, basically, it's defined as creating discord on the internet, basically starting fights or upsetting people by posting inflammatory or off-topic message in an online community. So basically, a social media troll is therefore someone who purposefully says something that is controversial, and the idea here is that they want to get a rise out of other users. It's done on purpose. You just pretty much want to cause chaos. So certain words bring trolls out of the woodwork. So even if a post is relatively tame and a factually accurate one. So the recommendation is that you just ignore these posts and they go away. Yeah, so rather than engage in a back and forth, you might also, end up becoming a troll yourself. So ignore. Most people, they don't attack an institution because often institutions will not engage. That's the difference. So they have, there's no fuel to the fire. But what do you do when a message you post goes south? You meant one thing, but maybe, it stepped into an unknown landmine and somehow your message wasn't received as intended. In this case, the best defense is also just not to engage. Don't go on the offensive, okay? If the post has truly been misinterpreted, then you take it down immediately and also you apologize sincerely. You can take a break from social media for a week, while it blows over. From an institutional perspective, though, the PRB approach, for instance, to negative comments is just to not engage, especially if it's a one-off, okay? There are instances, however, when perhaps an organization decides to respond to the feedback personally. For example, last year, people were upset by the world population data graphics that showed an outline of India because it did not include Kashmir, so especially on Facebook. So this is an issue that arises every year, and the PRB team who work on the world population data decided to respond, but only via email, okay? We have similar examples for AFIDEP. The idea generally is, unless you really have to, if you ignore, it usually goes away. Or if there's need to explain something and it actually affects or it's a misrepresentation of your work. Even people in the media tend to do that. If you do feel personally attacked or unsafe, you can also block the user, okay? I'm sure we're all familiar with that, at least on WhatsApp. So you can block people on different social media platforms. This stops them from engaging with you. Another way is that, you can report the user to the platform for harassment or violating the terms of use. Yeah. So social media is a harsh world, but it's, as long as you don't continue to offend, I guess you and pretty much the rest of the world can move on. So it doesn't have to be all bad in that aspect. There's the good and the challenging moments, but it doesn't necessarily have to lead to negative results. So before wrapping up today's presentation, we just need to go over 10 best practices that can be applied to any form of social media. These are great ideas to keep in mind, especially as you become more deliberate user of social media in your work, for research and policy. The 10 best practices for social media are, as you see them on the screen. The first one, be yourself. So this just entails, have a personality on social media. That is yourself. You be true to who you are. And after all, no one wants to be social with a robot. Try and be approachable, human. We are all human, so you'd assume that the interaction would be a human kind of interaction. And this is why individuals often, get more followers than organization profiles, because, the connection feels more personal and genuine. If you're looking at an organization, it feels more like an institution. But if you see someone's name, it's more relatable. It's, individual versus organization. The second one is to make social media a habit. How do you do this? So you can check in twice a day for about 10 minutes a day. So this is much easier than, for example, spending an hour at the end of the week trying to figure out everything that you missed for that week. So spending little bits and pieces, in a day. The third one, think before you post, okay? It sounds straightforward, but I think a lot of times people get caught up in the mix of things. So you might be able to delete a post, yeah, but the internet lives forever, and people nowadays have screenshot options. So what would your tweet look like on the front page of New York Times? If it's not good, then don't post it. Have that, 2 seconds of accountability. Ask yourself why you're posting the thing you're about to post. The fourth one is build a targeted profile. If you follow everyone and everything, honestly, you're going to be overwhelmed, okay? You can't follow everything that's happening around the world. So decide what your professional goals are for using social media, okay? Pursue them and mix in other interesting content along the way. You don't want to get lost by, trying to catch up with everything else. The fifth one, have meaningful conversations, okay? So don't just put out meaningless information. Actually engage on topics that you are passionate about. Let it be a meaningful interaction. Leave a mark, let people know what you stand for. It shouldn't just be, today you're commenting on this, you're making noise in different corners. I have an identity. If people hear Saman Naz, they know this is what they stand for, okay? Number 6, visuals, visuals, visuals. I feel like I should add another fourth, visuals, okay? So this includes pictures, graphs, videos, and so on. So visuals, they'll do better on social media rather than just using plain text. So you're not just telling people what they need to know. You also need to show them. Sometimes, they say a picture says 1,000 words. So do exactly that. If you pick very good visualization, sometimes you won't need to say much. I'm thinking of this, just remembering, some of the work we do in our PowerPoints. It's the same thing. If you have visualization in your slides, sometimes you end up having less bullets. So it's the same concept, visualize. There's number 7, you share the anecdotes. So in addition to being yourself on social media, don't be afraid to share life anecdotes. The connection in this sense, it feels more personal when you aren't just a demographer. That even the word itself, a demographer, what is that? But, also people want to relate to a runner, a dog lover, a meme sharer, maybe someone who's into trees and nature, reproductive health rights, you name it. So have something that other people can connect to. Then number 8, write for anyone. Social media is free, well, apart from your internet use, but yes, it's free. You don't need a journal subscription or a college degree to use it, As a researcher, you want to distill your ideas in ways that anyone can understand. And this is important for facilitating a well-informed public. And you also want to give them that quality, data-driven information that they can then advocate for critical issues or whatever matters are of personal interest to you. Number 9 is to engage and respond. So don't set a profile and then abandon it or share only on your own content, because this comes across as worse than not having the profile at all. So a key thing to remember is that social media is about being exactly that, social. So make sure that you treat these online platforms as if you were engaging with them in person, such that if someone wants, is asking you a question in real life, you wouldn't just walk away. So that being said, it's well within your rights to ignore or block harassment and also aggression. It goes either way. And lastly, number 10 is you look at the data, okay? Like Twitter analytics. one of the best things about Twitter is that you don't have to have a specific kind of account to look at your analytics. So take advantage of this access. You can see what posts do well. You can also see which ones that don't do well, and then you adjust from there. In addition, this is another way to report back to the funders. I bet you didn't think about that one, huh? Yeah, so everything we do on social media is very important, and I hope that, you know, this information has been very useful. This is our last slide, but we just thought to have a list of resources that might be useful with some more in-depth information, and also tips about how to begin to engage, and not just engaging, but engaging constructively on social media. So I hope that we'll be seeing more activity on your different social media pages. Tag us, use the hashtags, share the links to your work, yeah, and all that. So at this point, I would like to just end the presentation here. And thank you very much for joining in. I think Laura will come in at this point to share the next steps in terms of, you know, the next exercise. Thank you.
Thank you, Ziwe. That was great. That was also full of information. I'm sure some of the content was familiar to some of our fellows and to me, but I know a lot of that content was new, all of the tips. Giving that guidance about what to do if your message goes south, or if a message wasn't understood as intended. That was really helpful. So thank you so much for that. I hope you all, I think you all should be able to see my screen now. I'm going to introduce the homework. I recently sent the homework to you all in an email just before the webinar began. You all should have now a Word version or a Word document that includes your homework in it. So I have it up on my screen, so you should all be able to see it. First, in your homework, it's just a one-page worksheet. If you can please, for the first part, draft a Facebook post here, as you can see, to share some recent research findings or to disseminate your work. We highly encourage you to use this as an opportunity to draft a potential Facebook post you could use to share your blog, which you all have been working on potentially, or your policy brief that you've been completing for this program. So we encourage you to do that, though it is not required. So please, again, for the first part, draft a Facebook post. And as Ziwe mentioned, visuals, visuals, visuals. Please include visuals if you have any that you think are relevant. That's the first part. Second part is to draft 3 tweets on a connected topic. So all 3 tweets ideally should be linked to each other. I think Ziwe mentioned in her presentation that it's never a bad thing to include many tweets about one topic to really drive home a message. So have them all ideally be connected. At least one should include recent data from the real world. And we again encourage you to use this as an opportunity to share your blog or your policy brief for this program. Zunaid made a great point, or asked a great question, or pointed out that in this document we say 140 characters for each tweet, but he shared a good reminder that Twitter has actually since extended the character limit. So you do have up to 280 characters that you can use per post, but we do always, with social media, encourage you to keep them as short and sweet as possible. So yeah, your homework is 1 Facebook post and 3 tweets. I think that should be clear enough and straightforward enough. If you have any questions as you're drafting these and completing the homework, please do not hesitate to reach out to me or to your working group leads. But yeah, that should be our homework. Marissa, did you want to say something?
Yeah, just to clarify that the revised version of your blog is due at the same time as these social media posts, and the hope is that they would go together. So the homework is to do the social media posts, but then also revise your blog to send back to us once more.
Yes, that's a great reminder. Your blog, your final draft of your blog is also due at the same time. And as I mentioned in my email, the deadline is December 11th. And again, like your past assignments, please coordinate that with your working group lead. So, any questions? If you have any questions, feel free to write them into the question pane. We are monitoring that software section. But if not, I think that concludes our webinar today. Thank you all for your patience. Right on time, exactly 10:30. And thank you, Ziwe, for a great and very informative presentation.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Looking forward to seeing your blogs and your social media posts.